Okay, before we get started, I wanted to mention a new experiment that I'm trying. I've been wanting to do this for an extremely long time, and there's no good reason why I haven't, which is there are around 30 days each month, and there are 31 chapters in Mishlei. And Mishlei Pekius is a good thing. So if I just get into the habit of reading a parak a day corresponding to the day of the month, then I will not have to like flounder around looking for the pasukim that I am trying to look for. And it'll also, I think the experience of, if there's one thing, there's more than one thing, but if there were one thing that I've gotten out of my Mishlei Shiurim in the last 4.5 years, in terms of like these regular Mishlei Shiurim that I hadn't gotten from years before, it's the process of seeing the pasukim in order and being aware of the like macro themes, and I feel like reading the pasukim straight through will be a way to do that, and also just to make me aware of like one of the whole things about Mishlei is it's supposed to be proverbs, meaning things that you have in your mind that you can like say and deploy and remember. So I feel like just internalizing them in a derech of bekius would be good. So I'm going to be doing that. We'll see how it goes. And that's a bli netter commitment. Yeah. Okay. All right. So let's do a quick review and then we'll jump right into the Mefarshim here. Mishlei 15:13, day 2. Leiv sameach yetiv panim uva'atvas leiv ruach nechea. I don't think we went back to our translation to see if we wanted to change it. A happy heart. You know what we didn't say? Happy heart or mind. Right. I mean, we should have said that. I mean, maybe we were all thinking it, that heart can mean mind, but I think it's always good to like, because in English we have two different words. I think it's good to like translate it. Not just two different words. We have two different words and we think of the heart differently than, yeah, exactly. So happy heart or mind will gladden a countenance, but with or in or by the pain or sadness of the heart, a crushed spirit. Okay. Saadia Gaon said, the happy heart will improve the appearance of the face, but in or with the sadness of the heart, the spirit will be crushed. All right, so our questions were, what is the subject of the pasuk? What is the decision-making scenario? Is it about our own emotional regulation or is it about how it affects someone else's emotions? We'll see that there's a third option soon. Who's panim and who's ruach? If they lack panim tovim and have ruach nechea, so what? 3, what is leiv in this context? Okay, I guess that's where we acknowledge the question. 4, what is simcha in this context and how does it qualify leiv? 5, what is panim? 6, what about a leiv that is neither smeach nor atzuv? How does it affect the panim or the ruach? How does that kind of leiv affect the panim or the ruach? 7, yetiv in what way? 8, what is ruach in this context? 9, what is the causal direction of atvas leiv and ruach nachea? Meaning, is it the atvas leiv causes the ruach nachea or the other way around? And how does it work? 10, how are these two halves opposites, especially considering the fact that the first half says panim and the second half says ruach? What is the opposite of ruach nachea? 11, what is meant by atvas leiv? 12, what does nechea mean? How does it qualify ruach? 13, isn't this obvious? If someone's happy, they'll be smiling and vice versa. What's the chiddush? And then 14, who's the intended audience? So our ideas from yesterday were, Isaac's idea was your emotional state, Isaac's obvious approach theory was, your emotional state in one area will cover your overall emotional mood for good and for bad. So that is saying basically that like, a leiv sameach will affect your entire emotional demeanor positively, right? And then an atvas leiv will affect your entire ruach, your entire psyche, meaning any atvas leiv, yeah, or at least it has the potential to. Okay, then we had Moshe's idea, which is that Moshe Koppel's idea, that you have to take into account the emotional reaction and response of the people or the emotional disposition of the person who you're rebuking, and that's connected with the other psukim. And so it's the second half is saying if you awaken the atvas leiv, that can crush the spirit and undermine the efficacy of your rebuke, or also just be bad for the person. Even if you actually are saying something that is good content-wise and like warranted. And likewise, you should not just dismiss them because they're related to a RASHI. I think that idea doesn't fit in quite as well, but I see where you were coming from. And then the first half is depicting the model, the paradigm of like, if they're happy, then it's going to be well received and it's going to be good. And then as a Fader's question isn't that too high of a bar, right? That they're going to rejoice. And then Isaac said, theorized possibility, maybe the first half is describing where they're at and the second half is describing the reaction to Tochacha. And I think just keeping it as like a paradigm is good. And it's not saying that it has to be this, but it's like the two ends of the spectrum. Okay, then we had Moshe Levin's idea, which was, I think my favorite one, which is that, if you are happy, you will know it. if the person's happy, then it'll be evident. But if they're sad or depressed, it's not going to necessarily show up. So you have to like look for the ruach, not at the panim, to figure out that problem. Okay, and then David's last idea that he ended with was how to be successful as an influencer. The havmina is that the content is all that matters. Kamash Malan, your Lev Sameach or your Atzvas Lev can affect how people receive your message. Okay, so we're gonna do something we've never done. We're gonna go first to Rashi. Okay, and the reason why is because this is a very Rashi type interpretation, and it fits in well with what we did last night. Lev Sameach Yetiv Panim Im Tesamach Libo Shal Kadosh Baruch Hu. Okay, Belechtecha B'drachav Yetiv Lecha Es Panav Lasos Ritonecha. So if you cause God's heart to rejoice, okay, which is what we were talking about in Crest class last night, basically the idea is God doesn't have emotions, okay, but that when we talk about God's happiness or sadness, it really is a statement about his brios and to what extent they're in line with his will or his design. It's really more of a statement about us than God. So if you act in a way that is misameach libo shel kadosh baruch hu, meaning that it's in line with his drachim, so then yetiv lecha es panav, he will make your countenance light up. Why or how? Lasos r'tzanecha, by doing what you want. Okay, by doing your will. Vim te'atzev es libo, and if you make God sad, okay, which means that you do something in a way that's contrary to his will, you live in or act in a way that's contrary to his will. Yirai lecha ruach nechea. So this is an interesting thing. Yirai lecha ruach nechea. So I think there's a asymmetry here because I think he's saying yitav lecha. Oh no, never mind. Sorry. I read it wrong. Yitav lecha yetiv lecha panav, meaning God will be happy by doing your will. To do your will, and then if you make God sad, then He will show you a ruach nechea, a crushed spirit. Kamot ad amrat, as it says, Adam. That's by Noach and the flood, and then ruach nechea is talent. I don't know what that word is. Ruach shel za'af. It's like a psychological state of anger. Yeah, right. Okay, so what's the idea here? I'll go ahead and prepare the thing that you're going to quote. Yeah, 2:4. Yeah, I think it's 2:4. Yeah, right. So this is best stated.
Immediately wrong.
Yeah. This is who's the who? Ram Gamliel bin Asher Bibi Huda Hanasi. 2:4 in Avos. Aseh Ritzono Kirtzonacha. Oh, Hill. Okay. Where does it say Hillel? So far, I've got Ramon Gamliel Benosha Rehuda Nasi.
Yeah. Oh, no, it was Dal. Sorry, no, Hillel's right after that.
Okay. Yeah. Aseh Ritzono Kirtzonacha. I always have a hard time translating this. Make
your will like
his will like your will, right? Which really means treat his will like your will, meaning you should do what God wants as if it's what you want. So that he will enact your will as if it were his will, right? So that's just the again, this is basic idea here that obviously God doesn't change, right? And he only does what he wants. Okay, that's how the world works. So if you want something to be done the way you want, there's only one option: is you have to align your will with his will, and then you'll automatically get what you want. You know, it's amazing how it works. You know, yeah. So that's the basic concept. But the question is, what's the chiddush, or like what? To me, the chiddush is going to come from giving this very, very gross mashal, right? Like make God happy, and he'll be happy towards you, and if you make God sad, he'll be crushed. Like like in R Yosef, I feel like we don't talk in those terms that much, you know. And it's pretty like even talking about ruach nechea, yirai lecha ruach nechea. Like I don't know, it's very, very extreme language. So like, what do we get out of like framing it this way, or how can we utilize this the way Rashi's taking it?
I mean, the way just a little bit defending Rashi.
Yeah.
the way he's saying it is that he's gonna like kind of like this is what he's gonna show to you. Not that he says
Yeah, right.
Not that not that he will have
Obviously, yeah, that's what I'm saying. I don't think Rashi is saying that God. I know that there is a Hakira article. um, yeah. Was Rashi a corporealist? To which we responded, no, Rashi was not a corporealist. But I don't think Rashi was a corporealist. So yeah. So I don't think he holds that God actually has emotions. But yeah. Well, this was the secret council. You don't know about this?
No.
Oh, let me stop the recording. Okay, so yeah, so the question is, what do we get out of this Rashi? How do we use this Rashi, I should say? You hear the question? Like, I mean, look, let me restate it. Either there is an intellectual chiddush to this, and it's teaching something beyond, I'll say, Ritzono Kirtonacha, etc., or there is a psychological chiddush, and I tend to think it's the second way because I don't think this is chiddush. Yeah.
Two things.
Yeah.
One, given that Mishlei came first, it could be that.
That's true.
Still
right.
The practical.
That's true. That's true. Yeah. That's actually a good point. Right. Yeah. Okay, I'd buy that. Yeah. So the question is, what's the chiddush on avodas? Yeah. No. I mean, and that's a much easier question because that's in a context. That's in meaning it's in the context of avodas, which has a mission statement. It's in context of the other memras. Yeah.
Yeah. I'll also say, from an emotional standpoint, I think it makes it definitely makes it more relatable. You already I think it can be hard, if you say, trying to align yourself with the way that the system works is going to be good, and trying to go against it's going to be bad.
Yeah.
Okay, yes, we can accept, mentally accept it, but it doesn't have an emotional impact.
Right.
In the same sort of way as if you let's say, if you go against your father's wishes,
yeah,
he's going to be very unhappy with you, and if you follow them, he's going to be happy with you.
Right.
And the good and bad that comes along with that.
Yeah, right. So I think this is part of a larger point, and this is really more of a Tehillim point that I make in my Tehillim shiur a lot, which is that I think obviously the default stance in the olam is to really feel like God has emotions and to think God has emotions, and that's very bad. But I think we tend to go too far in the opposite direction. That the reason why the Torah, when I first came to yeshiva, or when I first started learning about God not having emotions, I think that there is a feeling that the whole point of the Torah speaking in Lashon Bnei Adam is you just decode the mashal and then throw out the husk. But the more I learned Tehillim, the more I realized that David Melech, again, this is not a chiddush, if you've heard shiurim from me before, but you are a psychological being. You do relate to things psychologically, and we can't know God. So what happens is you have to get the ideas clear about God not having emotions and God not changing. But the question then is, what do you do with your emotions? If you don't harness those emotions and direct them towards God, you will end up in some form of avodah zarah, whether it is projecting those emotions onto reality independently of God, or making yourself into the God. The human being, the human psyche cannot have a vacuum there. So David Melech's approach, as I understand it, and not just David, but all of Tanakh is redirecting those towards God. And so I do think that you do have to lean into, and you have to skillfully leaning into relating to God in Lashon Bnei Adam, and walk that balance of realizing intellectually that God has no emotions, but emotionally feeling that way towards God. I've been meaning to write about this for a long time. The best, I don't know who this person is. Oh, do I even have it here? That is not who I'm talking about. I think it's Holly Adler. Hold on a second. Okay, I don't have it. There is a okay, there's a poem that expresses it really well. Maybe I'll post it, or maybe I'll actually write the article finally. Yeah. So anyway, I do think that it'd be interesting to experiment with, again, it grates on me, but like, what would happen if we started thinking of like, I'm doing this to make God happy, and knowing that that's not actually true, but feeling that I want to make God happy, and then he'll be favorably disposed towards me. I mean, again, it's a very dangerous thing, but like that is the lashon that that like the especially David Melech talks in. Yeah.
Maybe this is also a bigger question, but is it even like permitted, or doesn't make sense to do that, given that it like, can you like in certain sense lie to yourself in that way? But like
right. So the way I would let me just try to find, maybe it's in my email.
I feel like you can't say it's like a bad thing, given that that's the approach the Torah employs. Like,
yeah, correct. Yeah. It's a question: is it lying to yourself? For example, I think we would say.
says it.
Yeah, exactly. Right. I think we would say when we say Shema Yisrael Hashem Eloheinu Hashem Echad, is that lying? Right. I would say not. Even though when we say God is Echad, it's not exactly. We're using it equivocally, right? Yeah.
Well, the thing is, there we have a meaning to it. I mean, it could be that we're using it equivocally, but when you're actually telling yourself to feel a certain way towards God, which is a false feeling, meaning that the idea which that feeling represents is false.
Right, but so let's take another example that is easier to emotionally relate to than Yichud Hashem, which is God's existence, right? So when we feel that God exists, but the only existences we can have feelings about are physical, contingent, finite existences. So that feeling itself is also a lie, and it's an unbridgeable gap. Our psyche will never be able to have any emotion connected to the reality of God's existence itself. So you're responding to the closest thing that your emotions can relate to, and then like positioning that.
Right. I guess I'm still asking like to justify why even that's allowed.
I'm saying it's only allowed because we have a matir from the Antigonus, or from the if Ilmali Mikro Kasav Iev Shalom, in a sense, meaning if God didn't speak this way, then it wouldn't be allowed. But I'm saying though that it's also the lesser of two evils, which is the other. In other words, like the question is the question is predicated on a premise that could we just not do this, and the answer is not doing this would end up in a worse place emotionally. I'll give you another example as well, is the Sefer Ikarim in book 2, chapters 2 and 3 about, is God, I feel like I talked about this recently before my break, is God, there's only two types of agents that act by their nature and compulsion, or agents that act by will. So the question is, how does God act? So there's a problem either way, right? If you say he acts by compulsion, so then he can't control his actions, he can't do the opposite. It's an inferior type of acting. But if he acts by will, so then that implies multiplicity or change. So the Sefer Chaim's conclusion, the way I understand it, is we say he acts by will, not because we understand it, but only to negate acting by compulsion, and it's the lesser of two evils. So we feel that God acts by will, even though that's not really like accurate.
Right.
Yeah. I want to read. So this is not my approach, but this is this poem by, again, I don't know who Tali Adler is. I see her name from time to time. To me, this is just a really, again, I would not even like dare to write anything like this. I think like this is dangerous stuff, but I think it's a good exemplification of the way that we're supposed to like walk this bridge. So she says, it's kind of poetic. If you are lucky, you will live to see your parents begin to need you in the way you once needed them. You will feel it in the most small things, lifting a cup of water to your father's lips, adjusting the light so he can sleep, laying a hand on his forehead. And you will be desperately sad, but also lucky, because each time you do these things, you will remember that he once so many times did them for you, and you will know that you were and are loved. God too is a parent. But God's biggest flaw, if one can say such a thing, is that God will never grow weak or old. God will never need us to do for him what he once did for us. And this perhaps is why God asks us to build the Mishkan, to bring him sacrifices, to give to him what our hearts compel us. Maybe what God is saying in this moment is, help me drink a glass of water, turn on the light so I can see, not because he needs it, but because in doing these things for our Father, we are able to feel that we are giving back a tiny piece of what he has given us. And we know that we were and are loved. Maybe what God is saying in some way is this: I do not need your food, your light, your hand on my forehead, but please know always that I need you. So that's, I think, just an interesting way to say it, because she's definitely saying God has no needs and God doesn't actually need us. But the things you're doing in the Mishnah or the Mikdash of like bringing food to, you're bringing food, in the Kodesh HaKodashim when you're lighting light, So the Torah itself is like putting us in this very, very weird position where we have to know that we're not actually benefiting God in any way, yet we're doing actions that are highly emotionally charged that are like ilu, they're for God. So how do you like walk with that? And what I'm saying is like emotionally, the lesser of two evils is to frame what we do for God as avoda to him, even though he has no needs, because the alternative is we are the Adon, and then God becomes like, that's what I'm saying. Either someone is going to be the Adon and someone's going to be the Eved, and if you don't treat yourself as the Eved vis-a-vis God as the Adon, you're going to make God into the Eved serving you. And emotionally, you're going to have to take one of those two sides. So like, this is the lesser of two evils.
Right.
Yeah. I didn't expect to learn from him today, but yeah. Okay. So I think we talked enough about Rashi. Okay. I saw this really cool thing in the there's so much I want to show. Okay, hold on. The Ralbag. If anywhere he's at the end of the packet. I forgot if I forgot to put him in the packet.
It's only in the
second volume. I don't know why.
It's in the back here.
Yeah, okay. So he says, Lev Sameach, Hine Halev Hasameach, Yetiv Ha'iyun. Okay, so I think here he means mind. Let's see. The happy Lev improves analysis. Uvakas Halev, but with anger of the Lev, Uvi Itzvono, and its pain or suffering or affliction, Tiha Nefesh Nechea V'doeges, then the soul will be crushed and worried. Okay, you see here, he's not bothered by replacing ruach with nefesh. And in this sense, simcha is more praiseworthy than kas. Elisha amar lo menagin l'sameach libo v'az haisa alav yad Hashem. And you'll see that that's why Elisha told the musician to play for him to make his heart rejoice, so that the Yad Hashem could be on him. This is an interesting point. This is why I want to bring it up. Shekol yimei kas Yaakov abeno Yosef lo sharsa alav ruach hakodesh. Now I thought that the reason why he didn't get ruach hakodesh is because he was sad about Yosef, but this is angry. This is an interesting thing, right? So here he's saying that the Lev Sameach, meaning a happy disposition, like happy emotional state, will improve your ability to learn, and a sad emotional state will interfere with your ability to learn, right? So what's the, I think that is the idea, but anyone want to just like talk it out a little bit more? Yeah.
I think you might think that you could be perfect and just always have set time for learning, and it'll always be uninterrupted, even if you have other things going on.
Yeah.
But anything can intrude in a process where you have to be hyper focused. So of course, if something else bothered you or made you angry, it's going to sit somewhere in your mind,
Right.
And it'll affect your ability to stay on one subject and to think clearly about a subject you're supposed to be unbiased about.
So it's interesting because you're mentioning two qualities. You're mentioning your ability to focus and also the bias or the subjectivity, and I feel like those are definitely two of the big qualities. I'm just trying to think if I think those are the two biggest qualities. I'm just trying to think if there's any more. Yeah.
I think being in a state where your spirit is being crushed.
Yeah. I know if you were a visual person, which logo would be in your head.
Yeah.
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 It's Amazon. Yeah.
Yeah. That it can like not only affect the quality of your learning, which I think is what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Your ability to be learning in the first place.
Right. Even to engage in the activity.
Yeah.
Correct.
Like,
Yeah.
Like I remember when I was in a bad situation, like even like when I was able to like so there's sometimes where I was like I felt like I just needed to cancel my focus because it was like I finished work and I had nothing left in me to like do something, like do another activity, and not just like be crashing and doing nothing.
Yeah.
And then even when I had my focus, so like I wanted to just spend time just like talking about other things.
Yeah, right.
Like decompress.
Right. Yeah, that's a good point also. So we got three things. We got the ability to engage in the learning, the ability to do it undistractedly, and then the way it actually affects your learning. I think here's one that we can maybe all relate to. I don't know if I'm projecting, but like if you happen to be learning with your chavrusa and you're in a bad mood, you will shoot down ideas either in a more unwarranted way or with more force, and you'll be closed off to certain things that you would not ordinarily be closed off to. That can affect your learning as well. I think the Rambam discusses this in Shmona Prakim. So the takeaway, secret message.
That's true. Yeah, it's a classic.
It is a classic. What's it doing here?
What is it?
It's a Rambam Hilchos Tshuva 3:4 with a shofar, remnants of shofar, of course. Anyone know where in Shmona Prakim the Rambam talks about your caring for your emotional state and like walking and seeing like nice trees and stuff? Is this it? He talks somewhere about how like whatever. Oh yeah, I can't. Oh. Okay, oh no, I can't find it. But the Rambam talks about this point as well. But basically, like I think the takeaway message here is also relevant to this yeshiva. Is you have to care for your emotional state in order to be able to function at maximum intellectual capacity, And like I think there is a certain again, I'll speak for myself, is a certain like intellectual machismo of like I can just like be like a Spartan and like just I can like learn and like even though I'm emotionally falling apart or I'm burnt out or whatever, like I'm just gonna force myself to do this and like power through it, and like no, that could actually result in an inferior quality of learning, and it also could create future burnout that can like totally sabotage your learning, So like you need to care for your like there is a hierarchy of needs, and like your yishuv hadas, your emotional state of mind is a foundational thing for your ability to engage in good iyun. So I think that's a good good Ralbag there. Okay, who else did I see that I wanted to show you? Oh, so there's an interesting Rinach. Okay, so let me show you Saadia Gaon first, which you don't have, which is now in all Torah. Unclear to me whether whatever. I'll read it first. So he says, Gila Yosef Masha Belev Sarise Paro Kasher Ra'a Pnehem Zoafim. How do you translate that? As Yosef revealed in what was in the heart of the ministers of Paro when he saw their angry faces or their upset faces. Kumosh Nemar Vihinam Zoafim. Sar Hasarisim Amar Daniel Hanania Mishael Vazaria Asher Lama Yirai Espinecham Zoafim. Okay, so these are two. These stories have a lot of parallels here. Yosef in the pit or in the prison, and then Daniel Hanania Mishael and Azariah in Nebuchadnezzar's captivity. So if you just read this, you wouldn't necessarily be able to get what his point is. Okay, but the Rinachmias we do have. Summarizes it. Oh no, sorry. The Sefer Chuka. That's R Yosef Kimchi on the left bottom. Pirish Hagaon Rabbeinu Saadia Zal. So it's funny. The footnote says Lo Matasi Befirish Rav Saadia Kain Ach Kain Mufia Befirish Rabbeinu Tanchum. I don't know who that is. La Daniel Aleph Tes Vav. So I mean, Saadia Gaon wrote a lot, and so we don't have all this stuff. But he says here, Ki Daniel v'Chaverav. Okay, just basic facts about Daniel and his friends, right? So they were basically in captivity along with all the other like royalty and like good people in Yehuda, and they were forced to eat the pasbag hamelech, which was this non-kosher food. Mashma, it's meat and wine that they had to like drink, and Daniel the four decided to eat seeds instead, or zeronim, whatever zeronim are, and they went on this diet of the zeronim, and like what happened was after I think it was like 10 or 15 days, so then their faces were like all lit up, and like that caused the guy who was in charge of them to take notice of them, and like that led to like Daniel's promotion and everything. So he said, so Ibn Ezra has a whole thing about how you should eat like that food and how, like, you see in India they eat rice and like that's healthy for them and stuff. And so, but Sefer Chuka takes it, or Saadia Gaon takes it in a different direction. Ki Daniel v'chaverav shayu ochlim v'zeronim b'simcha. Okay, so they were eating this like meager food in joy. Nire marehem tov ubriye basar min ha'ochlim pas bag hamelach. Their appearance was better and healthier than those who ate this royal, like, good quality food. Because those guys were eating that food in a state of anguish. Because they were eating usher stuff. So there's all the other Jews who were eating this non-kosher food were upset. And he says, "Velohaya meiti pneim," and it didn't help. It didn't improve their faces. So the interesting thing I find about this is he's saying that, like, so this is kind of like not the flip side, but like the Ralbag was saying how your emotional state can affect your mind and the functioning of your mind. This is saying that your emotional state can affect your body, okay, which again is for us, it's not as much of a chiddush because we recognize more of the mind-body connection than they did back then. But Shlomo Melech has a lot of psukim that I think that was actually the other Leiv Sameach Yetiv Geha, that like it can actually affect your physicality. And he's saying here, like, these other guys were eating this great food and they looked unhealthy, and Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, Nazario were eating this meager food, but because they were doing it happily, then like it showed. Yeah.
We were saying that it's like the whole body is supposed to just like their appearance, the way that they looked. Because it's Mariam and Panim. He doesn't say
Brie Basar.
Oh, right.
Yeah. So that's just interesting takeaway there also about your emotional state. So, like, okay, well, the takeaway from all three Pirushim of Rashi and Ralbag and who do we just read, and Saadia Gaon, right, is take care of your emotions, right? And that will improve your relationship with God and constitute your relationship with God, and also your mind, which is where your relationship with God comes from, and then your body, which you also need for that. Yeah. Okay, this is a good stopping point for today. There are other good ideas here, but we don't have time. Yeah. Okay, that was fun.
Thank you.
Yeah.